And hello to all of you out there in podcast world. This is the Front Row Network. I'm your host, Brandon Davis, and this is our August edition of Front Row Classics. And I'm back with someone who I haven't talked to on Classics since January.
Ooh, too long to stay away from classics.
Oh, how's it going, Jeremy?
Oh, it's going fine. I am very excited about the movie we're talking about today because, like its title character, it's not the podcast that got it's not me that got small. I blew it, Brandon. I blew the line.
I know.
I am big. It's the podcast that got small.
There you go.
There it is. No, I am psyched to be back on Classics. I love this show, man.
Oh man,
you and Lou absolutely crushed it on The Godfather. I mean,
that
awesome. You two matched up together. I think that's going to have to be a regular thing.
Well, he entered Classics world, and very soon we're discussing me entering Guilty Pleasures world, but more to come.
That's right.
So
cannot wait for that.
So yeah, but we are discussing a movie that's not a guilty pleasure, but one of the most honored films in movie history, 1950s Sunset Boulevard. Directed by one of the masters, Billy Wilder, someone, a filmmaker who could do no wrong, in my opinion.
A borderline Mount Rushmore of directors, I would think.
Yeah.
I think he's in the discussion.
Yeah, he would be in this along with Hitchcock and John Ford and
probably someone like DeMille or Spielberg,
Scorsese. Yeah. So yeah, he would definitely be in the discussion, but he's got something on most of them where he was a writer director. He wrote all of his films, so that's an added point for him, I guess you can say.
On that Mount Rushmore, it's that and Scott's favorite Quentin Tarantino, and
Coen Brothers.
Yeah. There we go. Now we're rocking it.
Yeah. So, but such an interesting movie, a movie that you can't really define by genre.
No. That might be its most defining characteristic aside from its performances. You're right, is that it really kind of dips its toe in every kind of film and pulls it off somehow.
Although the one that gets mentioned the most, and even here looking at the Wikipedia page, Sunset Boulevard, a 1950 American film noir, and it's noirish in look, it's noirish in tone. But
I guess we got the narration over the top, so
there's not one moral character in the bunch.
That's definitely true. That's definitely true.
So it does. It does. I mean, because I think people sort of get hung up on noirs having to be murder mysteries, which they don't have to be. But even though, there's murder in this, but it's not a mystery. You know it from the very beginning.
No, and I mean, you want to talk about just the guts of that alone. Like, you got smoking hot, leading man William Holden here, and you're showing him dead in a pool to start your movie. And it's just like, okay, well, let's see how this happened. And it's just, like the guts to start your movie that way. And this time is, you're right. Another thing that just sets Billy Wilder apart. He wasn't afraid to go there.
Billy Wilder had, there's so many things about this movie that he had guts to do. I mean, that you would even dare in 1950 Hollywood when the town was still run by the Warners and the Xanax and the Mayors. I mean, it's very, very gutsy.
To poke fun at all of that studio system, and especially the changes that happen in that studio system. And even, we'll get to it more, but like putting a woman in the power position of this movie, so many subversive things Billy Wilder was up to here.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's an added plus having you on this podcast with me because you played the role of Joe Gillis in a production of Andrew Lloyd Webber's Sunset Boulevard.
I did indeed. William Holden, eat your heart out, man. I made the 1950s look good.
So we will.
We'll dive into it, but it's definitely gives you a unique perspective playing that part on stage and in Weber's music, nonetheless.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I read an article where apparently Sondheim at one point wanted to turn this into a musical.
Yeah.
And he approached Billy Wilder at a party saying what he thought about it, and Billy said, "Oh, it's too over the top to be a music. It's got to be an opera." And so
and
I guess
did it.
Weber, yeah, got as close as it was to being an opera without actually being one.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. No, and it is very operatic. Well, I mean, and the movie feels that way, though. You know, there are parts of this movie that do feel that larger than life, borderline overacting thing that operas require. And yeah, so I mean, like I totally agree with Billy Wilder, and I'm glad that, you know, I worship Sondheim, but you know, I think that Weber was the right person to bring this one to the stage. But we'll talk about that.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I guess just to this is a very famous movie, and there is stuff to spoil, but it's, you know,
Yeah.
almost 70 years
I
old. So
think the statute of limitations on spoilers has passed officially on this.
yeah, almost 70 years old. So we're not going to dwell on spoiling anything. But just to give everybody a little bit of plot, William Holden plays Joe Gillis, a down on his luck screenwriter who at the very beginning is very down on his luck because he's floating upside down dead in a swimming pool.
Right. It's about down on your luck as you can get.
And just a brilliant contrivance on the part of Billy Wilder and his co-writer for this movie, Charles Brackett, to have the entire movie narrated by a dead man. I mean, it's just so interesting. And it's halfway through the movie, you kind of forget. I mean, you always know in the back of your mind Joe's dead, but you get so involved in the story that at the end, when he actually dies, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Oh no, you're totally right. It's an amazing trick of the script that, you know, you just kind of like with his narration, especially, you just kind of assume he's there. You know, like you're in a cafe listening to him tell you this crazy tale. And yeah, I mean, like you completely forget by the end of the movie. So by the time you see the gun in Norma's hand, you're just like, oh, right. He doesn't make it out of this, does he?
Yeah. And a series of events happens that causes Joe to run from the police because they're trying to repossess his car. And so he hides in a garage of what he thinks is an abandoned house, but turns out is...
Well, it looks like an abandoned house. It's not being very well kept.
But it turns out it belongs to silent screen legend Norma Desmond, played by silent screen legend Gloria Swanson, and her butler Max, who we end up finding out various secrets about throughout the movie, which we'll get into. But just, you know, this is just a movie that really delves deep into the Hollywood myth. It delves deep into the dark underbelly of Hollywood. It's a movie about opportunism because every character in this movie is an opportunist.
Oh yeah.
It's a movie about, you know, what we do to our heroes and our idols, you know, when we no longer have use for them, how we easily discard them.
Oh, absolutely.
And we don't realize that there's human beings under there. You know, just so many things to talk about with this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you hit on the biggest theme there, which is what happens when, you know, the times change and you don't change with them. I mean, that's ultimately what the tragedy of the movie is that Norma is so incapable of changing and dealing with the change around her that it leads her to break psychotically in a way that Max, you know, creates this fantasy world for her. And the second that fantasy world, after decades of cultivation, the second that fantasy world is challenged in any way, it all crumbles down with deadly consequences. And, you know, a lot of times I think that the history of Hollywood with regard to the immersion into the talking pictures, I don't think it gets mentioned enough. Or that was like a catastrophic like pipe bomb that got thrown into that town. I mean, like it wasn't just like isn't this so great? Like everybody's gonna love this. No, there were like some serious casualties of that in terms of careers. And I mean, Gloria Swanson herself was almost one of those, wasn't she?
Yeah, Gloria Swanson, fortunately for her, I guess, had a very full personal life, so she didn't dwell on her career as much as some other people like John Gilbert and other big silent screen stars of the time, because there were huge stars in the 20s that everyone knew their name, who by 1931, 32 couldn't get a job in Hollywood, mainly because maybe their voices didn't necessarily match what the public's image of them was in silent movies.
Right. Alina
So
Lamont situation
yeah,
going here.
you had people who lucked out, like Greta Garbo, whose voice sounded just as exotic as everyone thought it was.
Right.
Um, but but yeah, certain stars just absolutely, lived, maybe not to the incredibly dramatic extent of Norma Desmond, but who lived as recluses for most of their lives and didn't really go out as much, and just kind of decided to shut themselves away from the world.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, there's
yeah,
bitterness there, there's that bitterness that I'm sure like you can attest to from the history of Hollywood. I mean, like that had to have just destroyed a lot of people's lives in many different ways.
yeah, and there's such a cynicism in all of Billy Wilder's work, even his comedies, even something like Some Like It Hot. There's a cynicism to
Oh,
it.
oh yeah.
And you think about it though, this is a guy who came to Hollywood in the late 30s, and because he was escaping Nazi-occupied Germany, and
Oh wow.
most of his family was still, I believe, he had family members that died in the Holocaust. So
Oof.
this is a guy who's dealing with hell, and so and yet he writes in such a cynical, sarcastic, ironic way, and it permeates through all of his movies, and just an incredible artist. And for someone who was there at the time, and I'm sure he met some of these silent stars who were no longer
Oh
household
yeah.
names anymore, and so I'm sure he was writing from firsthand experiences.
Well, and I mean that is kind of the when it came out. I mean, there was a big hoopla, right, about like certain studios didn't want it or studio heads didn't want it
Yeah.
released and
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
But I mean, it shows you how enduring it was, even at its like people knew at the time that it was something special. I mean, you look at all the Oscar nominations it got, and yeah, I mean, like the movie itself plays on so many different themes. But you're right, that cynicism is always there in every sense. And in a way, again, that's the other big theme of the movie almost is that, the the glitz of Hollywood can go and seduce anyone, but it's eventually going to corrupt you. I mean, that's what happens to Joe as his character. He
Mhm.
makes a compromise, makes another compromise, and it turns into this woeful life that he can't stand. And even that, like, even as he's being drawn out of that by other people, specifically Betty, that eventually floods into her character as well and her morals. So, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
that cynicism is definitely throughout this entire movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's dive in. This movie is really about four characters, and
Yep.
so let's dive into the four characters and the people who portrayed them. And of course, you've got to start with Norma Desmond, played by Gloria Swanson.
Oof,
Such a brave
man.
performance. Something that I don't think had been seen much in 1950. This over the top, very just she's such she's such a domineering, she dominates everyone in this movie.
Oh yeah.
And
Her presence is everywhere.
yeah, even in the scene she's not in, you can feel her lurking.
Yeah.
And
Well, on stage in that scene, she's literally lurking there.
yeah, well, true.
No, you're right. Like Norma Desmond is such an enigmatic character for so many reasons, but it's because there's so many contrasting things that shouldn't work together that seem to work together, and it's all because of Gloria Swanson's performance. But at the same time, she's very fragile, but also showing this veneer of very like strong, domineering like presence. She's very she's very anxious about like her writing, but she's also very excited to get it out there and stuff. It's these conflicting emotions that I think are constantly there with Norma. And, as I've already said, it's because there's this fantasy world that she's living in. This is a woman who is the biggest star in the world, like dignitaries would come and send her. Like, I think in the musical, at least there's a line that says, Maharajas would fall at her feet and, would just touch her shadow type thing. And, this is the biggest star in the world. And then all of a sudden, based on nothing that you've done, no bad performance or something like that, just because a time, a new technology appears, you're done, you're kaput, you're gone. And, if you don't adapt, you die. And, she refuses to adapt. And it just leads to this unbelievable confluence of emotions that she inhabits all at the same time. And you can see it in Gloria Swanson's eyes in every single scene.
It just amazes me the last time I was watching it how her performance progresses, because she always has this flair for the dramatic, but in the
Right.
beginning she's got a lid on the crazy.
Oh, yeah.
When you first meet Norma Desmond, you're like, this is just a Hollywood diva who's a little too hung up on herself.
Right.
And she can talk in normal conversation like a normal human being. But slowly, as everything begins to unravel, and then of course in the final scene when everything pops and suddenly her eyes just bug out and stay that way.
Right. No, you're right.
I mean, it just slowly, little by little, that yarn just starts to unravel, and she plays it perfectly throughout the whole thing, because there are moments where you really feel like, oh, this is a woman I really like. This is a woman, who I can see why she was the biggest thing going. And then there are times when you're absolutely terrified by her. There are times when you're very sort of tickled by her. I think this movie is also a little bit of a dark comedy during parts of it.
Oh, so. Definitely. I mean, look, you first meet her when she's burying a monkey. I mean,
yeah.
You gotta kind of know you're winking at the camera a little there.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh yeah.
And look, I mean, it's a testament to Gloria Swanson's performance again, though, that there's a scene where we're burying a monkey, and you totally believe that it's like she's burying like her child or her best friend or something like that,
Absolutely. And just the way immediately, she doesn't even question Joe Gillis's presence. She just lets him in her world, because she's so craving, I think. She's so craving human interaction, and she's so craving anyone who could possibly give her any kind of attention. And Joe, also wanting attention in his own way, is willing to do that, no matter how dirty it might make him feel.
Oh no, and I mean, like once we dive into Joe, like I'll definitely hit upon that, because that's the defining characteristic of him, I think. But Norma is just I like what you said about the eyes, like you really can see it in her eyes throughout this. And in a way, thematically, that makes sense, because that is how silent film actors acted. They acted with their face and with their emotions. And, and it was overacting, but that's because it had to be. You only had visuals to work with. And, the sense that all throughout the movie, she keeps it there, except for that one scene where they're watching the movies, her old movies in the living room. Yes. And, she stands up dramatically and the music flares and she says, I'll be back up there again. And you can see all of a sudden that spark of madness that's inside of her. And you're right. She keeps it bottled up very well, because you just think, oh, she's just this kooky Hollywood lady. And, of course, the Hollywood people are already kooky to begin with. And then she's been in this mansion for decades. But the progression is very good there. And especially when she gets the hope that her script is going to be, picked up by the studio, you see that optimism. It really is kind of the big sadness of the movie, is you see, and like I said, I'm going to keep coming back to the musical, because it gave, you get more character development in a way, but like there's that sense of, she's getting ready. She's getting herself excited for something that is literally never going to happen. And we're the only ones who know it. And, seeing that play out is just such a tragic thing. And, you kind of understand what happens at the end. You don't agree. Murder is always bad, kids. But, like you get it. You get how she descends this far into her madness.
And and it's just absolutely, that character is just so interesting, because she's such an amalgam of how Hollywood treats, people over a certain age, especially women over a certain age. And too bad Allison's not here to wave her feminist flag. But
here in spirit.
But yeah, it's just amazing. And what you and we'll talk about this movie a little bit later, because they're kind of sort of cemented in history together, but another movie that came out that same year, All About Eve, and you see Gloria Swanson's portrayal of Norma Desmond, this over-the-top operatic performance, and you see Betty Davis's portrayal of Margot Channing, who's over the top in her own way as well, and yet is a much more down-to-earth human being. But they kind of go the polar opposite, whereas Norma Desmond, goes sort of the tragic way of it, and Margot Channing sort of takes control of her own life and really realizes, there's more outside of the limelight and all of that. So it's and these are types that Hollywood really hadn't explored before this character.
Oh no, and I mean, what a great year in cinema to get two leading female performances like this. And you're right. Like, the thing that's missing from Margot Channing is that isolation and that dream world. And that's literally
Margot's got friends.
Yeah. Margot does things. No, but I mean, like, that is, Max really kind of is, I think, a little bit of the villain, but we'll get there. I'm jumping ahead too far. I just want to talk about everything. No, but this performance is, in all the right ways, iconic. It really is. It lives almost apart from the movie itself. I mean, you want to know, like, think about how many times, I'm ready for my close-up Mr. DeMille has been parodied and all of that. And, I am big. It's the pictures that got small. Like, these are lines that have a life of their own aside from the film and even aside from the character herself. So, I mean, this is definitely one of the landmark female performances in all of cinema history, I think.
Yeah, I love, there is, Carol Burnett, of course, as everyone knows, did a wonderful parody of this on her, and it actually became a recurring sketch. Her as Nora Desmond and Harvey Korman as Max. And Gloria Swanson thought it was so hilarious that she wrote Carol a letter and actually asked if she could come on the show. And there's a great episode where Gloria Swanson guest stars on the Carol Burnett show.
Man.
And they don't, she doesn't appear in a Sunset Boulevard sketch, but the finale of the show, Carol plays her famous charwoman cleaning lady character who really never says much, and then Gloria Swanson comes on as Charlie Chaplin, and they do a pantomime thing together.
Oh, that's awesome!
Yeah, so
I need to see that.
Yeah, it's really, really fun. So it's fun, and it's so interesting that Gloria Swanson, she hadn't made a movie since the early 30s, and so for her this was a huge comeback. And it's really sort of interesting because it was a comeback, and yet she really didn't do much after, because she became so identified with this character that all she was offered was really bad, B versions of the Norma Desmond character.
Isn't that crazy? It's like you escape one crazy trend and then get locked into another crazy Hollywood trend.
Yeah, and there's so many parallels to her and to Norma Desmond in this movie, because there's just moments where when Norma Desmond is pulling up to Paramount during that great sequence, and she says, if it wasn't for me, there wouldn't be any Paramount Studios. She could very well be talking about Gloria Swanson, not Norma Desmond, and all of the stuff with DeMille and everything. There's so many. And with Eric von Stroheim, there's so much life imitating art, imitating life in this movie.
You're right. Like, and I think Wilder did that on purpose. I have to think that he did. I don't think he might not have specifically written it for Gloria Swanson, but when he started to think about casting it, it's just too perfect of a real life mashup there to miss. Same with, as you said, with Eric von Stroheim being a great director that all of a sudden wasn't anymore. And it's so interesting, like that scene at Paramount specifically. We see a lot of people playing themselves in this movie, but that scene with DeMille is just so heartbreaking. And, you can definitely see that's where the mountaintop is you're starting to come down onto the other side. Norma has reached the emotional apex of whatever she's going to get in this movie. And, that whole sequence, and especially in the musical, there's a great song there called As If We Never Said Goodbye. And Norma's talking about just being back there and being in the Monday morning madness and everything that she calls it. And, and I love that, she sees some people that know her and some people that don't. And especially the lighting operator. I love this guy because this scene, he says his name is Hog Eye, and, she acts like she knows who he is, but she doesn't know who he is. Like, she's not the kind who would know who Hog Eye, the light operator, is. But she still does it. She still acts like it is because she's playing the part there. She's playing Norma Desmond Desmond there. And, I often wonder when I see this film, what is the real Norma Desmond? Because I don't think we actually see her in this movie, except for at that very beginning where she's, acting, where she thinks that Joe is like the monkey Undertaker. And, I think that's like the only time you get to see a little genuine Norma Desmond in this. I think every other time in this movie, she's playing a part.
Well, and you get glimpses, especially in the scenes with DeMille, which for Cecil B. DeMille should have been an actor because he's so natural and good in this.
Yes.
But when the studio boy's talking to him and talks about, I heard she was a terror to work with, and he said, only in the end, a dozen press agents do terrible things to the human spirit.
Right.
So that really.
So now we're going on to tabloid journalism and paparazzi and stuff like that. The commentary is just never ending.
And how, celebrities can sometimes begin to believe their own press.
Yeah, that too. No, definitely that.
well, and in a comedic way, Lena Lamont believed everything Dora Bailey said.
Yeah, don't believe. There's nothing between us, just air.
but yeah, you just know that this was a very strong-willed young girl who wanted to be a star, who was ambitious, and fame got the better of her. And that can be said for a lot of people throughout the history of Hollywood.
You're not kidding.
From the golden days through now. So
absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, and she's just this towering presence in this movie, and we'll get to more specific scenes with her in a little bit. But let's talk about now Joe Gillis.
That guy.
Played by William Holden. And he's really, I don't think this movie would work without William Holden in it, because when you think about, they originally wanted to cast Montgomery Clift, who was a great actor, but Holden has that sardonic world weariness about him.
Yes.
Just this sort of everyman feeling where Montgomery Clift was too pretty to have played this part.
I mean, Monty Clift, look, great actor. No, one of the best. But yeah, just a little too polished for something like this. You know, you need somebody who's willing to get down into that grittiness of Joe's character. And Joe is such an enigma in this movie, because in a movie where you're trying to find somebody to root for, you really are. And you want it to be Joe. You want the redemption story. You want that thing where he's so, wearied by Hollywood, is a great word there from you. He's so world wearied by Hollywood. And yet, then you just want it to be, he's going to find a way to be with Betty and live that happily ever after. They're going to write that great movie. It's going to rekindle his love of writing cinema. But that's not what this movie is. And that's not what this character is. This is a guy who, when we first meet him, he's too far gone. He's already too far gone. And I think that's, again, the tragic aspects of this movie. I would call it a dramatic tragedy personally, but his character is too far gone to be redeemed. And yet it speaks to Holden's dual ability to be, at the same time of being that sardonic, sarcastic, pessimistic person, that he still has that little glimmer in his eye. And especially in his scenes with Betty, that you think, man, he could come out of this. But then you remember, oh wait, he's dead in the pool. So no, he's not going to come out of this.
Yeah, and the thing about Joe Gillis is he has this artist soul. He wants to be artistic. He wants to say something through his work, but he's just been so beaten down over the years by these Hollywood executives telling him to write things that are commercial, that that now he's just gotten to the point where he'll do anything, literally anything. Yeah.
The first time we see him, he's going to Fox, I think, and he's Paramount. Yeah, he's going to Paramount, and he says, hey, if there's something on offer, I'll write it. I don't care, I mean, you said it before to me, but one of his best lines at the beginning is when he first meets Betty, and she tells him, oh, I really liked this thing you wrote, Blind Windows. And he says, yeah, that was last year. This year I felt like eating. I mean, how perfect of an encapsulation is that? You're right. Here's somebody who's literally complimenting you on something that you wrote, that actually you wrote in a time when you were optimistic and that you were proud of once. And all you can do is insult her. You know, when she
Right.
says that to you, that just shows you how far down Joe has fallen from that. And you're right, he does have an artist's soul. He even tells her at the New Year's party, you know, like you remind me of me when I first came here, and
Mhm.
I thought I'd, you know, waltz up and have my own parking space, and it would be all roses. But, you know, again, an all too familiar Hollywood story that ends that way. So yeah, I mean, Joe is just such a crazy, crazy character, especially to play. He, you know, he's not a hero, and I think that that's what people want out of movies like this and out of characters like this. But he's not, and he never really is. The only heroic thing he ever does is so that he can be a jerk to somebody. You know,
Yeah.
like that's his one heroic moment in the movie, and
Yeah.
it's meant to make somebody sad. So I mean, that just shows you the palette that we're working with here.
Yeah, and sort of like Gloria Swanson's portrayal, you see Holden's sort of descent into just the ugliness of Norma's world. Because
Mhm.
in the beginning, he's resisting, and he's sort of looking at it as sort of an onlooker. He's not really
Yeah.
part. And then, but once he becomes fully enveloped in Norma's world, and he suddenly sort of sinks into the muck, he
No, you're
really,
right.
he really sort of doesn't look back, and he's living this double life whenever he's with Betty and whenever he's with Norma, and live out these two polar opposite ends of each other, and in the end, of course, it all just comes crashing down around him.
Right. And I mean, yeah, the double life aspect is good, but it's like it's the war within him. You know, it's the
Yeah.
war that he has to fight. Which one of these lives does he want? Because Betty is slowly, very slowly pulling him out of that. But he's
Yeah.
already made that conscious choice to descend into Norma's world. You know,
Hmm.
Norma to him is an angle. It's a way to keep away from the
Right.
debt collectors. It's a way for him to be taken care of for a little bit. But you know, you're right. He looks on it as like an outside observer. And the only reason I'm going to make this analogy is because Sarah and I like just watched this movie again, but it's kind of The Devil Wears Prada ish. You know what I mean? It's like at the
Yeah.
beginning of that movie, Anne Hathaway's character is like, "Oh, you know, I'm working here, but I'm not here. You know, like I'm above
Mhm.
this and everything like that." And you know, slowly she gets broken down to where her character is corrupted. Now Joe's already corrupted, so that's where the similarities end. But yeah, he looks on it as like, "Oh, you know, I'm commenting on this, like, oh, this lady's crazy. This is my easy payday." And you know, little does he know that he's going to get so enamored with it that he does get sucked up into it that will ultimately lead to his demise.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and it speaks to Holden's ability as an actor. This is the first movie we've talked about on classics with William Holden,
That's nuts,
and
man. That's
he's one of
nuts.
my favorite actors because he was a leading man who could do anything. He was a leading man who was also kind of a character actor
Yeah.
because he could do any kind of part. He could do this. He could do the Bridge on the River Kwai. He could do Stalag 17,
Yeah.
Sabrina, and then you go all the way through the Wild Bunch, and toward the end of his career with Network. It's just
Oh, he's
great
so good in
performance.
that.
Yeah, it's just great performance after great performance, and someone who I think he was always sort of overshadowed by the Bogarts and the Cary Grants and the Jimmy Stewarts, but could hold his own when you look back at his body of work.
Oh yeah.
And
And I mean, this is a crowning achievement. It really is. I mean,
yeah.
if nothing else, you have this part that just, you
Mhm.
know, is such an enigma of the time. It's like a combination of like a corrupted Mr. Smith and Sam Spade. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, he's just absolutely fantastic actor. Well, let's move on though to the other major male character in this,
Oh yes.
Max, played by Eric von Stroheim.
Get ready, Eric. I'm
Who
coming for you.
he's such an interesting character because he can be looked at. You can see him as the villain of the piece. You can see him as a very poignant character because someone who used to be on top of the world and has now just become this poor pathetic shadow of himself.
By choice, even.
By choice. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just to make, and once again, we were talking about DeMille, and here Eric von Stroheim, who was a director, acts this part beautifully. He doesn't overdo anything. He barely moves a muscle.
Right.
And he's so good, especially in the scene where he's explaining to Holden all of the dark, dirty little secrets finally, how he used to be
Yeah.
married to Norma and all of that. But yeah, just an amazing, and no other actor could have brought such authenticity to that part.
No, I don't think so. I mean, this is a man whose singular focus ever since he's met Norma has been Norma. Like that's
Yeah.
it. Like, ever since he directed her, ever since anything, he marries her, he is so dedicated to this woman that if the only way I can be around her is to enable her fantasy world and be her butler, that's what I'll do. And he does it by choice. He gives up a lucrative and very famous movie directing career to be Norma's butler. And you're right. Like this is such a crazy part to play, because I think that if you are searching for a villain in the movie, he's the easiest target
Yes.
because it is his indulging of Norma. It is his creation of this fantasy world around her that ultimately leads to the tragic aspects of her life and the tragic end of Joe's. So I mean, like, I think that, yeah, if you wanted to call him the villain, you're right, but he's not doing it for nefarious reasons. He's doing it out of a sense of caring. So, I mean, I guess if you wanted to say it, his heart is in the right place. He does care for Norma. He wants her to be happy. He doesn't want her to feel pain. But in a way, that is, I mean, how paralleled is that? You do
Right.
crazy things to protect the ones you love. So, I mean, it is an insanely complex character that I think sometimes gets overshadowed in this movie.
Oh, absolutely. And when you think about just how much do you have to be obsessed with someone to have been rejected by her? So, and you're willing to, you were a powerful Hollywood director and you're willing to literally be her servant.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely incredible.
And arrange monkey funerals. I
And
mean,
arrange and to have the foresight to write fan letters to her,
like
to make her think
hundreds of
she's
fan
still
letters.
to make her think she's still adored by the public, and to arrange fake phone calls from studios, and
Yeah.
it's just
The
you
level
know
of dedication to the illusion is astounding. And I mean, that's why you can say he is the tragic villain. I mean, like, he
yeah,
doesn't think he's doing anything wrong. He thinks that he's
no,
helping her, giving her her best life.
up to
And
the very bitter end, up till
oh my God, yes.
they're about to cart her away, and he's giving her one final fantasy at the very, very end.
Yeah, playing the director again. And
Yeah,
it's like, because I don't even think Norma knows who he is at that point, but he's
no,
talking like a director. He's
mm,
talking to her like a director. So of
right,
course he must be. And yeah, like he even then, when literally every part of the veil has been pulled off, he still can't let
mhm,
it go. He
no,
still has this incessant need to try to comfort her and give her any small level of comfort. And what I really wanted to see is that scene where they take her to jail, and like
I
there's
know,
nobody left to play along.
I
Um,
know.
yeah, so I mean, like, but yeah, that him in that scene, like, do yourselves a favor and watch him that whole scene, because
Mhm.
like, it's Norma is doing, and Gloria Swanson is doing the appropriate flashy thing that she should be doing there, but like him in the background is actually great acting,
Yeah,
great subtle acting. And I mean, like, you're right, it's that act of subtleness that sometimes gets lost in movies like this, but sometimes not showing the emotion is just as impressive.
right, right. And yeah, and to think about, we talked about with Life Imitating Art with Gloria Swanson,
Yeah.
but I you mentioned the scene, where they're watching one of her silent movies, and that's probably, when people say this is also a horror movie, that's the great horror scene of the thing.
Yeah.
But the amazing thing is they are watching a movie called Queen Kelly, starring Gloria Swanson, that was directed by Eric von Stroheim,
Oh,
and it was
wow.
and it was a flop, and it basically ruined their personal relationship. And so here they are watching this now. I suppose they mended their relationship, because there's no stories about them feuding on the set or anything. But
Well, you see, now I'm starting to think Billy Wilder had dinner with Gloria Swanson one night and then
yeah.
just wrote a movie around her. Like,
Yeah, so I mean, so once again, there's this deep entrenchment into the Hollywood myth in this movie.
yeah,
It's not fiction at all.
no. And yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine being on that set and like saying these lines, playing these characters. Like, so, I mean, look, in a way it would be easy because, you have so much to draw upon as an actor,
Mhm.
but like, man, that would be surreal. That would be
Yeah.
so surreal.
Yeah, and Nancy Olson on the Blu-ray tells a great story about Eric von Stroheim, about how you could tell he missed being the director and having the power. She said because she said we all had our own, like you do on the set, had our own chairs with our names on them and everything. And she said, but we would all switch and just sit in whatever chair was available. She said Eric always had to sit in his, and she said
Right.
he would always sit directly behind Billy on the camera, and you would always see in the scenes he wasn't an inch closer and closer because he was always so interested in what Billy was doing.
Monday morning quarterback director, man. Goodness, man. Well, but I mean, like, think about it. That would be hard for him. That would be, like he's there, like playing this, seeing this. Yeah, he'd get the itch again. Why wouldn't he?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just really, really fascinating character. I'd be interested in seeing like a separate origin story for Max. I think that'd be an interesting movie to do.
I'd watch that. I'd definitely watch that. I'd want to know like how this relationship began.
Yeah. I know, to do a Norma and Max origin story, that would be interesting.
Right.
But let's talk about the fourth and final major character, and kind of, I guess you could say, the purest character of the film, but she has her flaws too. It's Betty Schaefer, who's wonderfully played by Nancy Olson.
Oh yeah.
Because she's very, she has this fresh look about her, this, sort of innocence. And yet when it comes down to it, she's an opportunist as well. She's trying to get ahead.
Absolutely. This is one of the most fascinating characters in the whole thing. And it's because you have to watch the movie a few times to see it all, because you're so distracted by Joe or by Norma, or even if you're watching it for Max's scenes. Like, Nancy Olson plays this so perfectly. This is like the quintessential picture of like that professional Hollywood woman who, wants to get ahead and will do anything. I mean, look, she's risen to the personal assistant to Sheldrake at Paramount, like she's there, she's one of those copywriters and everything. Yeah. And, like she's up there, she's getting there, even though she probably should be higher considering she's a third generation movie worker.
That's what I think is fascinating about her character, is she's someone who's born and raised in the movie business. So, even without Joe Gillis's help, she's going to be there somehow.
Well, yeah. She's going to be fine. She's going to find something and write it and everything. But you're right. It's that optimism without the pluck, almost. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's not really
she's a cynical Debbie Reynolds.
That's perfect. That is perfect. I was trying to think of something like that. I was like, it's like Debbie Reynolds, but not.
Cynical Doris Day. Somebody like that. Yeah.
No, you're right, because it's not. She's realistic. She knows what the place is and everything, but she also knows how to manipulate the men as well. Like she knows how to manipulate Joe into getting him to want to rewrite the movie or rewrite the story as a movie. So yeah, but I mean, like, so you're right. Even the one who you see as the she's going to save Joe. She's going to get him out of this. Her love is going to conquer all. Even though, by the way, guys, this is an adulterous relationship.
She drops Artie like a bad habit.
God, poor Artie, man. All he wants to do is get married and clinch and everything. Like it's fine.
Or Jack Webb.
God, why is Jack Webb always getting crapped on, man? No, but like she. Even at the end of the day, she's cheating on her boyfriend and, trying to manipulate Joe a little bit. I do think that her feelings are genuine, though. I do think they genuinely do fall in love with each other.
I think so.
Yeah, because
I think so. I think there is a genuine romantic relationship that develops, and I think it's genuine. Because the final scene that they have, not the scene that they have in Norma's mansion, but the final scene they have out on the back lot.
Oh yeah,
I think that there's genuine feelings that they develop for each other. Oh, and
it's gorgeous. And one of my favorite lines of the movie that it's not really thought of as one of the best lines of the movie, but I love it when she's pulling away from him and she's trying to already. Loaded line. Actually, she even puts an "that's all" at the end of it, so it's even more of like that cynicism, like, oh, I'm just not in love with him, that's all. And but like the look on her face is so internally tortured But even then, she won't let the veneer slip away. She won't let herself be completely vulnerable with Joe. Like she's still holding something back there. But like that's an amazing scene. That's an amazing scene. It's almost like it's a different movie. That whole sequence on the back lot. It's so sweet and tender, and then it just gets ripped apart from you. But like their relationship is so good, and I love them at the New Year's party too, where we actually get to hear what happened a little bit to Joe. I just love the two of them in this. Nancy Olson is great in this. Really underrated.
She is, and just a little bit of a interesting fact: she was married to Alan J. Lerner, and he was apparently looking at her when he got the inspiration to write "I've Grown Accustomed to Your Face."
Look at that. Well, it's a good face. So, man, she's got some stories to tell then.
Yeah, but it's just such. She's such the antithesis of what Norma is. And so it's so jarring when you jump from scenes with Betty to scenes with Norma, because you just feel. I mean, you just feel like you're in a different world. And I think that and it's interesting. Norma and Betty don't have any scenes together. And just that moment when Norma's talking to Betty on the phone, trying to explain to her what's going on. But you really do, even though you think Betty will be better off without Joe, there really is some genuine heartbreak when he does actually do the right thing. And
oh my gosh. Like, I'll give you listeners out there some context. Is when I did this show, my wife Sarah played Betty, and so we got to do a wonderful love ballad called "Too Much in Love to Care," which was awesome. I love singing on stage with my wife, especially love scenes. But yeah, at the end of this, then you have to turn around and do the "I don't really care about you" scene, and doing that to your wife is pretty hard. But it's because this is the character of Joe. He knows exactly what buttons to push to get her to leave as soon as possible. So like, he knows her so well and cares about her so much that he knows exactly how to hurt her the deepest in that moment. Right. And that is just such a, even so, like Billy Wilder's taking these bright spots in this movie, these tender scenes where we can be like, oh, this is so sweet, this is great, and then he uses those scenes against you at the end, and he rips your heart out right with Betty's. It is gutting at the end there.
It is absolutely. There's it's just these four people, they just sort of, their stories all mesh together and intertwine in that moment at the end. It's just so amazing to see. Let's move on here, though, to we've talked about them some, but let's talk about our favorite scenes. What's the scene that stands out to you?
It's way too hard to not go to the ending scene. Mm-hmm. It's just so good. I mean, like, after all of this crazy operatic, melodramatic action, it's such a, like Billy Wilder actually, like, he allows you to take a breath there, like after the shooting, he falls into the pool and he gives you like a good couple of minutes there to just kind of sit with it, with that great score. And, and on stage, it's even better because there's no music after Joe falls in the pool, like, and it's just silence and you're just like there with everyone. But like, her coming down there, if it was just, oh, I'm ready for my close-up, that would be one thing. But it's the lines leading up to it, about all those wonderful people in the dark and, like playing the Salome character and like unable to let that go. It's so, I mean, like the look on her face, look in her eyes, you can see that Norma's gone. She's not there anymore. Something else has taken over. And of course, the final shot of that, of her slowly inching towards the camera, towards you, the audience. I would dare say it's probably one of the creepiest movie shots I've ever seen.
That whole sequence is so beautifully staged and choreographed by Wilder. I mean, where he places everyone on the stairs, because if you were to CGI all those people out and replace them with like palace subjects, it would be a scene from Salome.
Yeah,
I mean, and let's just really quick just say what a horrible movie that would be. Just hearing her talk about it.
You don't want to see a 50, 60-year-old play a 60-year-old? Come on, man.
But But
technology, they've been using it in Marvel for years.
I know, but just from the beginning, when you're in Norma's bedroom and you've got Hedda Hopper playing Hedda Hopper,
Yeah,
sitting talking on the phone,
yeah,
giving her scoop there in Norma's bedroom.
man, how did they get her for that? That's awesome.
And she's great at it too. All these people, I mean, all these people who rarely acted,
Yeah,
they'd been around the business so long they knew how to do it.
yeah,
And
exactly. What? This isn't
so,
hard.
so, and yeah, just the way and where everyone is standing on the stairs as she begins her descent down to the camera, it's just perfect. And that final scene, there's so many emotions. It's tragic, it's creepy, it's funny, it's sad, it's everything. And Wilder
Yeah.
encapsulates all of it.
Oh yeah, you've got like nervous laughter there. You're just
Yeah.
kind of like, what is this? But then you start to understand it, and it starts to grip you, and you're
Yeah.
just kind of like, wow, like, and yeah, it's almost supernatural looking at the end there. The way when she just slowly creeps towards you, to Gloria Swanson's credit, she keeps it the whole time. Like you would think with that long of a take, like you would let something slip just once, but she keeps that going the whole time, and you are just so uncomfortable watching her try to invade your mind as well. I mean, it's absolutely crazy how that works out. So I mean, yeah, that last scene is just borderline the best scene of the entire movie.
Yeah, I think a close second though was the whole sequence when she's at Paramount.
Yep.
From arriving at the studio and just there's all those little moments. You talked about Hog Eye, but I love when the boom mic runs by her head and it ruffles her feather at the top, and she sees it. And she's like, "This is the thing that put me out of business." And
just shoves it away. Oh, it's perfect.
And the performance from it's amazing because DeMille while they were filming this was filming Samson and Delilah, and he allowed them on the set to film these scenes. So you're seeing the real extras from Samson and Delilah, and all of this, and DeMille's performance is so good, and you can see his heartbreak by having to, when he finds out why they really wanted Norma, why he wanted the car, and and when he says, any other car, but not that car, and
oh yeah, well, I mean, yeah, when he even says that to the assistant, yeah, he's just like, get another car. Like, why did it have to be that one? Like, it's not a. And I think like the cynical way of looking at that would be like he just doesn't want to deal with Norma, like type thing. Like, oh, here comes the drama queen. No, he knows. He knows that like she doesn't have anything but this, and yet now even this has been ripped away from her, and he's the one who has to do it reluctantly. And it really is. I honestly thought it was an actor because I was like, well, surely that's not the real. I was like, when I saw it, I was like, it looks like DeMille, but like that guy's really, really good and stuff. I don't know why I think DeMille wouldn't be able to act, but he's great in that scene. And you're right, that whole thing is just like the surrealness of all that for Gloria Swanson too, like being at Paramount Studios again, for the first time in decades. Like, yeah, that you can just tell everybody in that scene is acting so well.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other scene that always stands out to me is the New Year's Eve party for two.
Yes,
it's a sad, pathetic scene. And
it really is. Even though like Norma's trying to play it off like this like grand, awesome, fun thing, yeah, it's just the patheticness of it is just so like uncomfortable, borderline.
Yeah, and just. The way Holden plays it, like he's really not wanting to be there, and yet then of course at the end you see the whole tragedy of it, and that's when we really learn that Norma has suicidal tendencies and all of that, and you just uncover all these layers constantly.
And that contrasted with Artie's New Year's party is just a really great thing. Like, and I don't know if it's in. I think it might be in Holden's narration, but it's definitely in the narration that Joe gets to sing in the musical about, like he needed to get out of there. He needed to be around people his own age.
Yeah.
People having a really good time type thing, and yeah, like just the way that he does that, like this grand, like eloquent, like elegant ballroom full of amazing things, but it's Norma and you versus a tiny apartment with loud music and all these like people partying their guts out. You would think that you would want like the elegance and the lobsters and then like the crazy great food and the champagne, but ultimately it's Joe wants to be around the people, and it's great how Wilder shows, like, again, that thing you think you want, that thing you think is so glamorous might not exactly be what you think.
Right. It's not so much even those long scenes that we've been talking about, but there's just these images and these moments that stay with you, like the waxworks when she's playing with Buster Keaton, and H.B. Warner and Anna Q. Nilsson, and these are real silent stars. And Nancy Olson says something really interesting on the DVD. She says, "We all knew it was good, but I think the only person who really knew how important this movie could be was Gloria." She said you could tell it just from the way she approached her scenes, the way she was on the set. And she said you could tell it from all of these other, she said you could tell it during that waxwork scene with, the way that Buster Keaton and H.B. Warner handled themselves. They knew that they were speaking to the audience in a way that they hadn't before. This was them sort of letting the audience in on a world that the audience hadn't seen.
Yeah.
And so it just lends it to have them be a part of this movie and to play themselves lends such an authenticity and a weight that just getting regular actors to play them wouldn't, have done.
Oh, absolutely. And again, like, the great films usually just come down to the right choices. And you're right. How easy would it have been to just get people to like play Buster Keaton? Oh, find me an actor that looks like him type thing.
Yeah.
By going that extra mile, though, you're right. Like, these are sometimes people's first instances of even hearing this guy speak. This star who was as big as Chaplin, who was the biggest star in the world. It is just that extra mile that gets you that much better, and especially in the view of history. You think about that. So easy to do, but so easy to go the alternative. But I'm glad that Wilder goes that way because you're right. It adds so much context to the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other scenes that stand out to you?
I don't know. I think we hit most of them there. Yeah. I do like the Schwab's drug scene.
I
like in the musical, it's a lot of fun. There's a great song there called "Every Movie's a Circus," which is just go and listen to it because it's just really, really funny. They're talking about 4-poster beds coming up out of the wall, and of the casting director's office. And,
I love in this movie how Wilder uses so many famous Hollywood landmarks.
Yeah,
Schwab's is legendary because it's where it really is sort of it's one of the locations of the great Hollywood myth because it's where Lana Turner was discovered sitting drinking a Coke, and as Talon Scott from MGM was there and said, "I'm going to make her a star," and he did.
Yeah,
and so. Yeah.
I mean, countless things written there. I mean, it's a Hollywood landmark in and of itself. Like, just another way that Wilder can show you that this movie is really about Hollywood.
Yeah.
And
there really is, even though it's a cynical tale and it really is an ugly horror tale of Hollywood, there really is a bit of a sort of sentimentality and glorification of Hollywood on the opposite end of it too. I mean, Norma's final speech, talking about all those wonderful people out there in the dark and everything. It's like Wilder has this love-hate relationship with this place called Hollywood.
Oh yeah, so, and I can't remember exactly if the line is in the in the movie, but there's a line in the musical, especially in As If We Never Said Goodbye, where she says, "We taught the world new ways to dream." And yeah, like you're right. Like, even though there's all this crazy, terrible things happening, and there still are those screenwriter kids. There is still the arty character that just wants to believes that oh, I'm going to be this movie assistant or this first assistant. Yeah, I'm a slave right now, but I'm going to be able to get you married, and we're going to move out to the country and have kids and have this happy life. You're right. There always is that sense of that. There's these writers at Schwab's and these actors who know that they're going to hit it big, and I think that ultimately is, Wilder trying to reconcile, like, yeah, Hollywood has this ugly side that can really infect you, but there's also still always that promise of tomorrow and that promise of, that next script, that next audition, that could be the one that gets you there. And you're right to call that out there. It still is absolutely there. It's just buried beneath all the craziness.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we get sort of close to wrapping up here, just a few call outs to some of the technical aspects of this movie. The score by Franz Waxman.
Heck yes.
Is one of the best scores in movie history. Franz Waxman was one of those masters of the golden age who could do so many different types of things. But from the minute you see the Paramount logo and you hear the first few beats of that score, and then the logo and the camera pans through the ugly streets of Sunset Boulevard. I mean, it paints a picture, and up through the final moments, during Norma's close up at the end. I mean, it's just such an amazing score that fits this material so well.
Oh yeah, music scores I think are the most underrated parts of films, and for somebody who studied music in college, like that's usually what I gravitate towards. And Waxman's score here is just pitch perfect and like just blends every aspect of the movie together. So I mean, I don't know if he won the Oscar for it, but he definitely should have been nominated at least. There you go.
Yeah. And then the other one was John Seitz, who did the cinematography in this movie.
Okay.
It's just a beautiful black and white. I mean, beautiful black and white images.
The contrast is great.
And this is a movie you can't imagine in color. It has to be in black and white because
I wouldn't want him to.
No, it's too ugly a movie. And
stay away, Ted Turner.
And another thing they talk about on the DVD is Nancy Olson says that she noticed that whenever they would do the scenes in the mansion, she said Billy and John Seitz, the cinematographer, she said they would always roll up something in their hands. She said, I never knew what it was. And she said, until I found out it was some kind of dusty pumice type material. And she said, and they would take it and they would blow it in front of the camera before every scene. And they said, and it gives the illusion that all of the corners are just a little dusty. And,
oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah. So
just extra mile stuff.
Just so just great attention to detail. But let's just talk about it's interesting for a movie that really was controversial at the time. It was well received by most critics and was a big hit. Wasn't received by most of the people in the industry. It was by actors, because apparently at the premiere, Barbara Stanwyck found Gloria Swanson, leaned over and kissed her skirt. And, well,
I'm sure that was intimidating.
But of course, the famous retort was Louis B. Mayer, who found Billy Wilder.
For God's sake, what's Louis saying?
Who found Billy Wilder in the lobby and basically said, he was biting the hand that fed him. He should have been run out of town on a rail, stuff like that. And apparently, in front of a lobby full of people, Billy Wilder told Louis B. Mayer exactly what he could do to himself.
I would give literally a lot of money to know exactly what was said there.
And this was 1950, and had this been a decade earlier, in 1940, Wilder probably would have never worked in the town again. But Mayer was slowly losing powers. So
I mean, this is like this weird, like in between period where people can't take a joke about themselves. Like, come on, Mayer, just get over it.
So, but yeah. So, Sunset Boulevard though was nominated for 11 Oscars, but as we mentioned, though, this was a year of another great movie, All About Eve.
Yeah, well, couldn't get to 14, huh?
Was nominated for 14 and won 6. Sunset Boulevard won 3. It won for Franz Waxman's score. It won for the art direction, and it won for original screenplay for Billy Wilder and Charles Brackett. And All About Eve won for the adapted screenplay because it was taken from another source material. So they both sort of won out there.
That's fair. But I mean, what's interesting that you say there is that if I remember correctly, all 4 of these actors got nominated, right?
Yeah, it's one of the few times where the same actor from a movie are nominated in all 4 of those different categories.
And none of them won.
No.
That is nuts. That's stupid, man.
No, because Nancy Olsen, Stroheim, Holden, and Wilder, and Gloria Swanson were all nominated. Of course, the Best Actress race that year is kind of legendary because you have Gloria Swanson, Betty Davis, and Ann Baxter, all three nominated in the same category. And basically, what they did was cancel each other out. And the winner that year was Judy Holliday, who won for Born Yesterday, which is a wonderful comedy. And is actually an interesting win because comedic performances rarely win Oscars. So
that's been an Oscars staple since their inception. Comedies just don't win.
Yeah, so that's really that's an interesting win. Although history says it should have been either Davis or Swanson, but
well, I mean, look, no offense to Judy Holliday, but you got those three performances. One of them should win.
Yeah, and then Holden loses to Jose Ferrer for Cyrano de Bergerac.
Okay, well,
which, Eric von Stroheim loses to George Sanders for All About Eve. So
rightfully so. George Sanders is amazing in that.
And then Nancy Olsen loses to another comedic performance, Josephine Hall for Harvey, for playing Jimmy Stewart's Dottie Hands.
I don't know if I agree with that one. Although there is more for her to do in that movie than Nancy gets.
Yeah, I mean, so that's interesting. A year where two comedic performances win Oscars, but
because the two all-time great dramas cancel each other out.
But it was also it was nominated for those four. It was nominated for cinematography, film editing, Billy Wilder for director and for Best Picture, But All About Eve wins, and Mankiewicz wins for Best Director.
Mankiewicz won for that, yeah.
But Wilder would win 10 years later for Best Director for The Apartment. So,
well, that is also an all-time great movie. So,
Wilder kind of has a nice track record.
People go see Billy Wilder's filmography. I mean, it's stupid how many great films this guy made. I mean, it's almost Spielbergian. Yeah, I made that up.
Yeah. Well, if Hitchcockian can be a word in the dictionary,
Spielbergian.
but
that one works. That doesn't work like everything.
A great quote I read by Wilder. He was talking about, someone was asking him about the different actors he worked with over the years, and he said, really, there's two performances in two movies of mine that walk the line between caricature and genius. And he said Charles Laughton in Witness for the Prosecution and Gloria Swanson in Sunset Boulevard.
Well, can't imagine why on Charles Laughton there. I'm not going to yell at Brandon. I'm not going to do it.
You'll have to wait till we talk about that movie at some point.
Yes. then you audience members, you listeners, you can get my Charles Laughton yell. I guarantee you I'll give it to you.
Yeah, and then to finish up, though, on the American Film Institute's list of 100 movies, in 1998 it was number 12. On the 10th anniversary list, it went down just 4 slots to 16.
Okay.
And then it was number 16 on the list of best film scores of all time. And then 2 quotes on the list of the top movie quotes. I Am Big, It's the Pictures That Got Small was number 24. And All Right, Mr. DeMille, I'm Ready for My Close-Up was number 7.
Ooh, I think that one should be higher. There's a lot of great movie quotes, but that one's really, really famous.
Yeah, it's really... Yeah, I'm not sure. Let me see.
You gonna try and look them up?
Yeah, so that was number 7. Number 6 was Go Ahead, Make My Day.
Okay.
Clint Eastwood. Number 5 was Here's Looking at You, Kid.
Number
4 was Toto, I Have a Feeling We're Not in Kansas Anymore.
Yeah.
Number 3 was You Don't Understand, I Could Have Had Class, I Could Have Been a Contender. Number 2 was I'm Gonna Make Him an Offer He Can't Refuse.
Sure.
And number 1 was Frankly, My Dear, I Don't Give a Damn.
Okay, I could move it up 2 spots there. I can put it in the top 5.
So yeah.
On the Waterfront's a great line, all right, but that's not as famous as I'm Ready for My Close-Up.
And in terms of Wizard of Oz quotes, instead of I Have a Feeling We're Not in Kansas Anymore, I would have put No Place Like Home there. Then you would have had an argument. But
right? Come on. Brandon, let's just take over the AFI. We'll be good. It'll be all right.
Well, that's one of our future projects.
That's true.
Someday here on.
Coming for you, American Film Institute.
I've got my own feed now. We can do this kind of stuff.
That's right, you do.
So anyway, as we close out here, though, before we talk about coming attractions, final thoughts on Sunset Boulevard?
It's just one of those movies that I think it has to be required viewing. If you want to call yourself a lover of cinema, cinephile, whatever word you want to call yourself, you have to watch Sunset Boulevard. The performances alone are insane. But then you start, like, even if you're into technical mastery of movies, like, there's something there for you. If you're into scripts, there's something there for you. There's literally anybody who loves any aspect of filmmaking. This is a movie where you are going to get amazing stuff to look at. So come for the performances, stay for the score, for the screenwriting, for everything. It is as close to a flawless movie as you can get. And I think that that's pretty rare nowadays. So make sure that you don't let the black and white throw you off. This movie is awesome. It will thrill you to the end. Just go watch it.
This is one of those movies where I will picket in the streets if they try and remake it.
Yes.
Now, I guess footnote though. Now, if they were to make a movie version of the musical, I would not have a problem with that.
They've been throwing that around for a couple of years.
I know they've talked about doing a movie with Glenn Close. They talked about Barbara Streisand at one point. They talked about several different people, but we'll see.
I'd be open to that.
Yeah.
But I mean,
but if you try to remake Wilder's work,
I don't want to see.
There's no reason to.
I love her, but I don't want to see Meryl Streep as Gloria Swanson. All right, I don't want to see Zac Efron as Joe Gillis. Okay, get it out of here.
Don't put the idea out into the ether.
I don't want to see Seth Rogen as Max. All right.
but yeah, this is a singular work that just can't be duplicated. It had all the right elements. It had the right look. It had the right cast. It holds up today. I don't think there's anything about it that's really dated because it's kind of all in its own. It was made in 1950, but it doesn't really look specific. It's kind of its own little world almost.
No, you're right about that. It isn't, but it is a time capsule. More of the contradictory things that somehow work with this movie.
I think because in 1950 we were already 30 years removed from the silent era, so it was already dated at that point, and so you were commenting on that.
Right.
So I think it was already, even though it took place in contemporary times, it was already sort of a period piece. So I just think the dialogue still works. I think because it was cynical, it fits more in today's climate than ever. I think with what we've been going recently, with the Me Too movement, it's relevant.
Oh yeah.
I don't see anything about this movie that's dated or creaky. So I think that anyone, I think this could be a great gateway into classic movies if you wanted to take.
Yeah, absolutely.
So and it's every genre packed into one. I don't think you can define.
You're right about that.
So yeah, absolutely, give it a shot. But we've come to the end of another classics here, and but we've got tons of exciting stuff coming up, Jeremy.
Yeah, but I mean, like, so much stuff. So first and foremost, for the rest of this month, you're going to get, after classics here, you're also going to get the newest episode of Flashbacks, which is going to be on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, to go along with our first ever front row flicks that was Raiders of the Lost Ark. And we want to just say thank you to everyone for that. That was a really, really amazing thing we did at the Hoagland Center for the Arts in Springfield, Illinois. We got to show Raiders and then be there with the upwards of people that stayed to discuss it with us. And Brandon, you were there. I wasn't able to attend, but I'm told it was just really, really awesome.
It was really great. There's nothing better than seeing a movie. We're in the era of streaming and we're in the era of Netflix, and it's so easy to watch something in the comfort of your living room. But there's nothing like sitting in a dark theater watching a movie communally with a group of people.
Yeah.
Because when you hear other people react, when you react, it becomes a new movie. You see things you've never seen before, and it heightens the experience, especially for movies that came out before you were born that you've only known from watching on a small screen. So to see it the way it was meant to be seen on a big screen is a totally immersive experience.
Yeah, and one of the biggest reasons why we even started Front Row Flicks was to get audience people involved with it, like hear what they have to say about it. And the discussion was wonderful. It's dropped on our podcast feed already. And this is a great place to announce what our second Front Row Flicks is going to be. We finally got the green light on it today, that on September 19th at the Hoagland Center for the Arts in Springfield, we will be showing the Cary Grant Hitchcock classic North by Northwest as our second Front Row Flicks.
Which we've already discussed on Classics. Jeremy and Allison and I did a very funny episode about North by Northwest.
Next we can do our James Mason off, but I think that might have to be one of our contests beforehand. Best James Mason.
This is a fun movie. It is. I think it's the most fun movie, aside from maybe To Catch a Thief, that Hitchcock ever did. It's not horror like Psycho is. It's got a ton of suspense, but it's funny and it's snappy the whole way through, and it constantly moves. And you've got one of the best sequences of all time, the crop duster scene and the Mount Rushmore sequence. And I can't wait to see it on a big screen. And the first person
perspective. We're giving it all away, Brandon. We're giving it all away.
I know, but I can't wait to see it on a big screen. But,
tickets will be on sale soon for that. Watch our Facebook feed, but also watch hcfta.org if you want to get tickets as soon as they're on sale. The first one was great. We're really hoping everybody comes out for that one again. Elsewhere, in September, we've started our new system of releasing specific shows on specific weeks. Guilty Pleasures the first week, Beyond the Mouse the second week, the third week is for classics, and then the fourth week for flashbacks. And then we have some others sprinkled in there. So here's the schedule for September. Write it down, people. September 3rd, you're going to get a dish on Searching for Bobby Fischer with our newest website writer, Phil. He and Lou Hare do that one. September 6th, the episode of Guilty Pleasures is Troop Beverly Hills, starring Shelley Long. Just gonna let you guys go with that one. On September 10th, you're gonna get a full disclosure on the new horror film The Nun. My wife Sarah and I will be bringing that out to you. On September 13th, Beyond the Mouse is coming out with Aladdin. That's right, that's going to be their featured episode that month, that featured movie. September 17th, very excited. Lou Hare has just released his Disney songs bracket, 64 of the most iconic Disney songs of all time.
That is Sophie's choice if I've ever seen it.
Oh my God, every matchup is terrible. I can't choose half of them even in the first round. I can't imagine going on, but we will be doing one of our typical bracket shows to give you the winner, at least the front row editors' choice of what that's going to be. We're going to do a lot more with that bracket. And then on the 20th, you're going to get the next episode of Classics, which Brandon, why don't you tell them what it's going to be?
We usually do Hitchcock in October, but because of the release of A Star is Born in October, the fourth version of A Star is Born, we're going to be talking about what most people consider to be the best version of A Star is Born, the 54 in October. So we're moving Hitchcock to September, and we're going to talk about Vertigo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's going to be that, and it's going to be a Hitchcock couple of days there, because then on the 24th, we're releasing the discussion from the Hoagland from Front Row Flicks on North by Northwest. So 2 Hitchcocks for the price of one, people. And then, of course, we're closing out the month on the 27th with the newest episode of Flashbacks on the fantasy epic that boosted Val Kilmer to stardom. That's right, we're talking Willow on Flashbacks. So big packed month there for the front row.
It is, absolutely. And also, I mentioned earlier, but I have my own feed now, and I'm already working on several ideas of additional programming aside from classics to do, more subgenre type stuff, discussions of the history of Hollywood, salutes to different studios. I might get Jeremy on there. We can do lists. I'd like to get Sarah on there to talk about musicals.
Yes.
So yeah, a lot of exciting stuff, and I've also contributed my first article to our writing. So look for that at some point. But
I can't wait for people to see that. Brandon ranks the top 10 Kennedy Center for Honors performances of all time.
That we had available from YouTube.
That we have footage of, yes. That we have footage of.
So a lot of exciting stuff coming up. We're rolling out here. So.
That's right. Just keep staying tuned. People find us online, the frontrowmoviereviews.com, Front Row Network on Facebook, Front Row Reviews with a Z on Twitter, and the Front Row Movie Reviews on Instagram, or the Front Row Network on Instagram.
And as we close out here for our dearly departed Joe Gillis and our dearly committed Norma Desmond,
Definitely in a tiny room for the rest of her life.
I am Brandon Davis.
I'm Jeremy Geckner.
And we will see you, all you wonderful people out there in the dark, in the front row.
Nice. Nice. Well done, sir.
Yeah.
All right. Well, at the very least, we got the recording from the screen. So
Good.